right, let me now introduce a very special guest. You might know him from his work with CBS during the college basketball season, but he is also the editor in chief and co founder of Hoops HQ. Seth Davis, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great, man. It's off season, but off season's crazier than the season, right, Tony? I mean, this is like unbelievable chaos going on. So I'm glad to take a little break and hang with you today.
Yeah, I mean that's what I always say. I say the month after the season is almost busier than the season itself.
No question, no question.
But
Up to coaches, it's the worst time of year for coaches. I mean, it's really what these guys have to deal with right now. Is nobody should. I know they're well compensated, but it's a lot. We can get into that if you want.
No, I mean I totally agree with you. But I guess we'll get started with I guess the main reason how this all got started is you had a few things to say about Ben Johnson and the Gophers at the back end of last year. And I guess the first tweet that caught my eye, it was after the Gophers beat Nebraska on the road. It was an impressive win. You tweeted out, I guess word for word here, Ben Johnson has done an incredible job with this team, one of the elite coaches and one of the toughest jobs in America. And I guess just for some context for the people listening, that Nebraska game came immediately after back-to-back losses at home against Penn State and Northwestern. So obviously, Twitter's not always the easiest to explain yourself, but I guess what were your thoughts with that tweet? Obviously, a coach that hasn't been to the NCAA tournament and was trending in that direction at that point. A statement like that catches some people's eyes. So, I guess what was your thought process with that?
Well, I will definitely concede at the start that my some of my tone and choice of words may have been a little bit over emphatic, let's say. So I will concede that point. It was funny. I was on the field of 68 doing a show with them during the Final Four week of the Final Four, and we had this conversation. I said, "Oh yeah, Minnesota fans are mad at me because blah 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 blah. I think it's one of the toughest jobs." And I think Jeff Goodman said, "Yeah, your tweet was a little much, though." And I said, "I think may have been a little much." And then Fanta was like, "Hey, we've all been there." So it was I think, a very sound and important point, maybe over emphatically made, maybe poorly made. I think Ben Johnson is a really, really good basketball coach, and I watched his teams the last couple of years, looking at their ability to hang together, to play hard, play for each other, play for him, and improve throughout the course of the season. Um, Oftentimes with, I think, considerably less talent. Now, how we judge that, how we quantify that. Um, but I think the main point, Tony, is that no one's ever won on any significant level at Minnesota. Certainly not over a period of time, aside from Clem Haskins, who we know committed like very serious academic fraud. I use the example of Richard Pitino. Richard Pitino was there, 8 years? I want to say. I'm looking at the records right now. 8 years. Went to two NCAA tournaments. Certainly didn't light the place on fire. Gets fired at Minnesota, goes to New Mexico, and does such a good job at New Mexico that he just got hired at Xavier. Is it because he suddenly, forgot how to coach while he was at Minnesota and then became a better coach? Or maybe is it the nature of the job? Tubby Smith got fired at Minnesota for not winning enough. Of course, Dan Monson didn't last very long. You go all through history. I think I want to say, you'd know better than I would, that Clem Haskins's appearance in the Final Four was their only appearance in the Final Four. I'm
Yep.
looking. I'm looking at the record now, right up on Basketball Reference. So again, Clemmy went to Sweet 16 and an Elite Eight in 89 and 90. Again, I know that you know this. Go back to 1982, Sweet 16. No NCAA tournaments back to 1972, Sweet 16 loss. And before that, before 1972, zero NCAA tournaments. So there's nothing to suggest that Ben Johnson or any other coach should be succeeding at Minnesota at a super high level. Did he, prove himself, Ben, as an elite coach? No, he definitely did not. Did he break through that? No. I won't even say, to be totally candid, Tony, that firing Ben, I'm not saying that was the wrong move. One of the things that's happening right now, we can get into this conversation because we have all these definitions about what's a good job, right? So people in Minnesota didn't like the fact that I had the temerity to suggest that it's bad weather in Minnesota. Like, sorry if I touched a nerve there, everybody. Minnesota's freaking cold, okay?
That
Certain,
was the one thing I had that
certain times of
I
year.
definitely looked at it. I think a little too much in a vacuum, but
Yeah.
I like to defend my state a little bit. And
Well, I don't think it's an indictment of Minnesota to say that it's cold. It's just a fact. It is
you're
just,
not wrong.
hey, Minnesota is one of the most beautiful places on the planet. I've been there a couple of times. Minneapolis is an amazing city. There's nothing like a beautiful summer day in Minnesota, nothing like it. And the people, and you are a great example. Minnesota nice is absolutely real. The nicest people on the planet are in Minnesota. It is a fact that it's cold in Minnesota in December during college basketball season. That should not be controversial. But here's what I'm saying is, um, at this point, the revenue sharing and the NIL component of this is everything. So we used to say, well, what makes a good, like, what's a better job? Indiana versus whatever. Like, is
Yeah.
Indiana still a top 10 job? You can talk about tradition, facilities. Are there a lot of players in the area? All that's out the window right now. The only thing that matters is how big is the bag. And what happens to somebody like Ben is you need so much support. You always needed some level of support, but now you need real dollars. You need people writing checks. And if you're not winning, if those people are souring on you, you can be an elite coach and it doesn't matter because if you're an elite coach with in not good talent,
Yeah.
then you're not going to win games. I give me the guy who's a bad coach and has better players over the guy who's a great coach with worse talent every single time. And so I do think you get to a point at Minnesota. Texas just had the same experience where it's like the guy's a good coach, but if the money folks are sour on them, he's got to go. And I do think that's what happened with Minnesota. They got a great replacement, obviously, in Niko, who I believe went there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And so he should do a good job. But again, if he does do the kind of job that folks seem to want, that's going to be breaking the precedent at Minnesota.
Yeah, so before we get into I guess a little bit more about Minnesota job, I had one more question for you
Sure.
about Ben Johnson.
Okay.
Like you mentioned, college basketball even today is different than when he started his tenure at Minnesota. And I do agree with a lot what you said. I think the process of hiring him was a sound idea, but he might be a little too early in like his coaching career. Some of the bumps that he went through, I think another coach might do at a lower level. And it would not surprise me at all if 5, 10 years from now he gets another chance and he does succeed in a different position. But it just there becomes a point, and I made this point a couple times during the back end of the year, where you have to hold yourself to a standard as a program. You mentioned that Minnesota hasn't had much success in 20 plus years, and that's all true. But it's just if you accept all
Longer
of
than
these,
longer than 20. The entire history of the program, Minnesota's never been a high level. We're talking about a couple of Sweet 16s, one Elite Eight, and one Final Four. I'm not dogging it. I'm just saying facts.
no, I
Okay.
listen. I totally agree with you.
Okay.
I the one question I have before you quick
Sure.
before we get into that a little deeper is, uh, how long of a leash do you think a coach like that should get in today's day and age?
I think 4 years is fair. I mean, I can't sit here, Tony, and tell you, hey, oh my God, this is an outrage for them to hire Ben. The other option is doubling down. If
Yeah,
everybody doubles down on a guy and say we're going to support our coach through this time, there's many examples. I mean, the classic example is Mike Krzyzewski during his early years at Duke. The
yeah,
boosters had totally turned against him. He was losing. I think he went 10-17 and 11-17. Lost to Virginia in the ACC tournament by like 40 points. Came back the next year in the arena, and he had the final score from that game up on the scoreboard for his players to see. The difference is you had an athletic director, a guy named Tom Butters, who was able to stand by Coach K and say, I believe in this guy, and here's a new contract. It's harder to do that today because the athletic director can believe in a guy. If the people cutting the checks don't believe in him, he's not going to be able to have a capable roster. So, but look, I mean, the job is the job, and the job is to win. And Ben takes a job certainly knowing that he's got to, prove that he can do it. And so it's one thing for Seth Davis, nobody's Seth Davis, to say, "Hey, I think he's good. I think he's elite." It doesn't matter. You gotta show us the bacon. And the fact is, he couldn't get him to the tournament. If he could have gotten him to the tournament, he'd probably still be the coach. And it's a bottom line business, and he knows that as well as anybody.
Yeah, so I guess getting into a little deeper with the job itself.
Sure.
I guess my wording would be it's not one of the worst jobs, but it is one of the most unique jobs in the country. And I think that one thing that the national media, I guess, always doesn't point out, and that what makes it unique to really any other job in the country, especially at the major conference level, is I think hockey, because it's a hockey school. In the winter, the majority of the people that go to the school are more interested in going to the hockey games, and right now the hockey team's better, and they draw better crowds, and no other school in the power conference level has to deal with that. Michigan has a good program and everything, but just from like a pure fan base like point of view, no other program has to deal with that. But like you did mention, I guess referring back to your original tweet, everything you said, that they have only been to one Final Four, and it did involve academic fraud. They've had 14 tournament appearances in 85 years, 16 NCAA tournament wins. It is a tough league. Brutal weather, outdated facilities, and minimal NIL money. And then you said, I understand fans want more, but if you think the problem is coaching, respectfully, I disagree. Ben has done a solid job this season, in my opinion. So, I guess in the grand scheme of things, if you had to really like simplify it, why do you think Minnesota is a tough job?
Well, let's go back. Let's just, to be fair, I like to keep these things on a factual basis.
Yeah,
Tell me some of it. So my dad's a lawyer, and whenever I get in a debate with him, he always says, "Was that a fact or an inference?" So when I say he's done a solid job, that's just my opinion. We can agree to disagree on that. But
I don't disagree with you.
well, like you say, you can't choose your own facts. So if you read back, let's take it a little bit. Let's take it one at a time. Read the tweet back to me at the beginning, and let's take each one
Yeah.
separately. So start reading.
Yeah. So you said fans of Gophers men's basketball confused as to why I called this one of the toughest jobs in America. Minnesota has been to one Final Four. That was the
Fact.
first thing you said.
True.
Yep.
Factually true. Okay. Go
And
ahead.
that required extensive academic fraud.
Factually true.
Uh, there, I would say there are a lot of other programs that have done that, but
Also factually true.
yeah.
Also factually
Uh, 14 tournament appearances in 85 years.
true. Factually true.
16 NCAA tournament wins.
Yep. Check.
Tough league.
Now that my dad would say, is that a fact or is that an inference? That's an inference, not a fact. Okay. But you would agree with my inference. It's a tough league.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely, especially now
Okay.
with more teams.
Okay.
Brutal weather. That is a fact.
Well, brutal. No, brutal is an inference.
Yeah, that is
You
true,
agree with my
actually.
inference. I don't, 20 below. This isn't brutal. You should see. So if I gave you numbers about the average temperature in Minnesota compared to other places, it probably would be lower than other places during the college basketball season. Fact.
Correct.
Okay.
My point on that one specifically
Yep.
is there are obviously a lot of really good programs in the Midwest.
Also
The
factually true.
the weather's not that different in Madison, Wisconsin,
Very true.
Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Omaha, Nebraska. Those 3 places have brutal weather, and those are 3 of the best programs
How about
routinely in college
Chicago? How
basketball.
about Boston? I mean, there's no good basketball. I mean, college basketball in Chicago, Boston, but the weather is brutal.
True.
Madison, Wisconsin. A cold day in Madison matches anywhere. So I
Yeah.
didn't say it was the only place that had brutal weather.
Yeah, and I guess my point, especially now
Let's
more than
keep going.
ever.
Keep going. So I said brutal weather. Go ahead.
Yeah. One last thing on the brutal weather, you don't even have to respond, but it just that's not that big of a deal in recruiting nowadays.
Okay,
Money is
that's
the
an
number one
inference.
thing, and then coaching, and like no
That's
one's
an
like,
inference.
I can't go to Minnesota because it's too cold. I just think that
I'd say it
that's
was
a
a
case.
deal breaker. I just said it has brutal weather.
Okay.
Okay.
And then you said outdated facilities.
Is that factually true?
Yes, that is another thing that gets talked about ad nauseum amongst Gophers fans is the barn. And honestly, they might even have an outdated fan base. The people that go to the games are not my
Hey,
age.
you said that. You said that. I didn't. Okay, and so then what was the other one? The most important one, which I said.
You said minimal NIL money.
Factor not not minimal is an inference, but
Yes.
if you
And
ranked, I don't even know the answer to this, Tony. Guys like Goodman, if I asked him 1 through 18, the NIL budget in the Big Ten, where would you guess Minnesota is?
last year, I'd be pretty stunned if they weren't last.
Last. Okay.
Yeah.
So last.
Yeah.
So outdated facilities, almost no NIL money. How the hell is Ben Johnson supposed to get that team in the NCAA tournament?
I agree with that. And then my rebuttal to that always is Dawson Garcia, McDonald's All American, All
True.
Conference player. He
Great
had
player.
talented teams. The year before, he had Cam Christie, second round NBA draft pick, Jamison Battle, who's on a guaranteed deal with the Raptors right now, Elijah Hawkins, Pharrell Payne. Those are winning basketball players that came through his program. And some of them weren't on the team at the same time, but
Well, they
he had
left.
a lot more talent than people realize.
Payne and Hawkins transferred out.
Correct, and it's naive to not point that out.
Pharrell Payne went to Texas A&M and was a key cog on a. Did they? I forget, second round team or Sweet 16 team. I forget how they went. They were a good team.
I think they won 2 games. They lost to Michigan, I remember. No, so just one. It was the
I
4
think in the
5
second round. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and then Elijah Hawkins was
Texas Tech.
Texas Tech. If Elijah Hawkins and Pharrell Payne were on Minnesota this year, you think they would have gone to the NCAA tournament?
Yes, I totally
Would have had a
do.
much better chance. We
But and
can't
then
say
my question to that though is why didn't he go to the NCAA tournament when they were on his team?
they were a year younger. Everybody. I mean, it's a totally fair question. Those guys were not the best players on their teams. Hawkins was important to Texas Tech. I mean, they were key components of a team. They weren't, the number one guys, but but they were also why the best. So why didn't Texas A&M recruit for Payne 2 years ago? Because maybe they wasn't good enough or didn't see that he wasn't good enough. So you make a very fair point and very legitimate point. I'm saying if Payne and Hawkins are in Minnesota, Minnesota has a far better chance. Maybe they wouldn't have made it, but they would have had a better chance to make the NCAA tournament. The reason why they weren't on Minnesota is because Ben Johnson didn't have enough money to retain them. And that filters all through the program. Dawson Garcia is a Minnesota kid on his third school. So whatever money they can give him, they gave to him. Maybe there's other reasons for him. Dawson Garcia didn't make it at Marquette, didn't make it at North Carolina. Okay. So he
Yeah.
came to Minnesota where he could be the man and play 40 minutes a game. And it is beautiful to watch him progress. But I'm just saying this is this is the world that Ben Johnson has to operate in. And so you say, well, how can we go to the tournament? Say, well, give me some more money to buy players to give me a chance. But that's the reality.
Yeah, and I do agree with all the points that you said. The thing I get frustrated with is the people that do think it's black and white because it really isn't. I think there was a
It
lot that
isn't.
went
I
into it.
agree. And my tweet was too black and white. So I will concede the point.
That's all right.
But
I've
it
done the
pissed you
same
off.
thing.
It pissed you off. So at the very least, it brought us together.
Yeah, that's one thing I am good at is getting irrationally angry on Twitter. But
Well, you're not. You got a lot of company there.
yeah. So I do have one more question about the
Okay.
job of Minnesota.
Okay.
You're obviously a big national media guy, big city guy. How do you think? I think the really bigger issue for the men's basketball program, specifically at the school, is that they just don't invest in it, and it's down the line of their preferences. They care more about football, and arguably they care more about men's hockey. So, um, but I think what makes Minnesota unique is it's in a big market. As much as Minneapolis is cold, it is one of the bigger markets in the Midwest. And college sports is unique because a lot of these programs do well because they're the only show in town. From your opinion, how much do you think that the University of Minnesota being in Minneapolis impacts their overall standing as a program?
I think it's probably neutral, to be honest, Tony. I don't think people are coming because it's in Minneapolis. I don't think they're not coming because it's in Minneapolis. Like I said, Minneapolis is a great. I remember the Final Four was in Minneapolis. By the way, I spent a lot of time with Wally Serbiak, who's like a rock star.
Oh yeah,
It was like, remember how David Hasselhoff was like huge in Germany, right? That was like a
yeah,
long joke. That was Wally in Minneapolis, and amazing people. But it's actually become, this conversation is getting a lot simpler now. What happens beginning July 1, Tony, with the revenue sharing and all that, and a lot of people think it's going to level out. Who knows really how that plays out? Theoretically, it could, because there's going to be a clearinghouse for NIL, so you can't pay a guy $3 million for not doing anything. He's going to get his rev share, and that's capped at 20 million across the university. So that theoretically should help schools like Minnesota. So their budget should be a lot more in line with every other college in the country. So that's the theory. How it all works out, like we're going to go back to having rules over like how much you can pay somebody, which means we're going to go back to cheating, because if you have rules, that means people are going to break the rules. There'll be cheating and enforcement and investigations and all that. So, but like I say, the conversation used to be about facilities and tradition and recruiting base and all that, and now it's like, what's your number, bro? Like, what number do I have? Is it 3 million? Like Robert Wright was at Baylor. Okay, he actually
yep,
signed an NIL deal at the end of the season to come back to Baylor, but those deals aren't worth the paper they're printed on. And BYU's got more money than everybody now. I mean, we're now in a world, Tony, where the best job in the country is BYU.
yeah,
Why? Because they got the biggest number. You got Duke, you got Kentucky, you got BYU. I think those are probably your biggest three. Arkansas is up there. I think Kansas is up there. Um, that's it. Like, what's the number? And
Louisville.
Louisville's, yeah, sure. So the hope, I think, from everybody, frankly, is that the new system does level that out. But in the meantime, you said it yourself. Indiana, Minnesota, you would guess, was dead last in the Big Ten in the NIL bag, and that means you can't win. And it's not fair to put that on the head coach. And I think you'd agree with that.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And then again, my other question after that would be that there is a level of expectation that you need to have as a program, and I think the bottom just fell out a little bit last
I
year.
would agree. I would agree. I can't sit here and tell you that Mark Coyle did the wrong thing by firing Ben Johnson. I don't like that it happened at 2 a.m, but that's beside the point. It just,
Yeah, that's a whole different story because
yeah. And by the way, the best way to bump up your NIL budget is to make a coaching change. So now we don't have a coach, and now that you say to your money guys, all right, who do I need to bring in here for you guys to pop open your checkbooks? And obviously, Niko was the guy. And so hopefully they're doing. I don't know what he has, but I hope they're doing it for him, because he can't win with it. He's a great coach, but he can't win without it.
I know for certain it is better than it was with Ben
Okay,
Johnson,
I would expect.
and I've heard substantially better. I don't have the specifics, but I've heard it definitely is better.
Good.
So,
I hope so.
um,
I like Niko. He's a great coach and a good dude. You'll like him. Have you talked to him yet?
I have not specifically. I went to the press conference though.
All right. Well, if you want to get to him, let me know. I'll shoot him a text. I'll vouch for him.
All right, I might have to take you up on that. But yeah, we've mentioned enough the overarching stuff with college basketball right now.
Yep.
I think the House settlement's like number one right now. That a lot of stuff is going to change after that, and I don't think a lot of people even realize what's going to change. And my thing that I always tell people that are like, "Oh, college basketball is ruined. I'm never a fan again." I might be the optimist, might be the Minnesota nice in me. I still think 5 years from now, we're going to work through this garbage and it's going to be better at the end. But it's just from your opinion, are there any, I guess, specific like rules or guidelines you think should be enforced to help it out?
I mean, I just think I've been saying this on Twitter. If you've seen Tony, like, it seems inevitable that athletes are going to be legally deemed employees. They're going to form a union, and they're going to negotiate a collective bargaining agreement, which might include a work stoppage. Happens from time to time. The world survives. And that way, a system can be in place that everybody's invested in, that everybody agrees on, and most importantly, that is not subject to lawsuits. because my understanding, I'm not a lawyer, is that once you have a CBA, you're pretty much, maybe not 100%, you're pretty much inoculated from lawsuits. Because, like, right now, you've got like these random judges saying the NCAA can't even enforce eligibility. Like a student, like if Minnesota wants to have Dawson Garcia as a student for the next 10 years, he should be allowed to play college basketball and accept NIL money and revenue sharing and all that. I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd. But
Yeah.
all it takes is one judge to do that, and at the very least, it throws a wrench in the system, and it has to work its way up the food chain, and eventually. So, the only alternative to this is, as they've been trying for years now, to get Congress to pass basically antitrust legislation, basically a federal law that says yes, the NCAA is allowed to make rules and enforce them. So that's going to be the big solution. And whenever someone says, "Oh, we're going to, have Congress pass this law," I say, "Oh, thank goodness, Congress is going to fix things. Oh, I feel so much better. Thank God for Congress. Congress is just this bastion of logic and nuance and efficiency and reason, and everyone's it just works. It just works really well. Like, Zy Gesund, good luck to you. I say it's like someone's robbing your house and you call the cops and the policeman shows up, and the good news is the cops are there. The bad news is he's blind and he's deaf and he has no arms. So that's where we are. And these folks, the same folks, maybe not the exact same folks, but the same species of people who were so resistant for all this time to let the players share in this incredible growth of economic prosperity that everybody was sharing in except the players. Not that they were getting nothing. I had a lot of fights about that. They
Yeah.
were getting a lot, but they were not getting their fair market value. Um, and everybody resisted that. And so what happened? They finally got sued into making changes that they should have been making themselves. And that's why we have this chaos. So the pox on their house, they're getting what they deserve. I am not Minnesota nice. I'm California obnoxious, but I agree with you that I do think, 5 years from now, hopefully it won't take 5 years, Tony, we'll get to a much better place where we do have a system in place where it's not chaos. It's not, a total free agency every year for everybody. Sooner we get there, the better.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The biggest three things that I tell people when they ask me, I think there should be an age limit because it's harder to enforce the eligibility in the years. We don't need 25, 26-year-olds playing college basketball, in my opinion. And then you just clean up the agents a little bit. I think right now it's a little messy right there with people getting too much money with these NIL deals, and then just enforceable contracts. I think those are the three things that if you did that right away, things would clean out pretty quickly. And again, I'm optimistically hoping we get a few of those things shortly. But I had a few more questions about the
Go ahead,
Gophers.
fire away. I got like 5 minutes for you, but go ahead, please.
Perfect. I'll wrap it up quick.
Good. I'm
Uh,
I'm I'm too long winded. It's my fault.
no, totally fine. So the Big Ten is interesting right now, and you said levels of jobs is very interesting because it is all about money. So I guess right off the bat, do you think Minnesota's the worst job in the Big Ten?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I do. I mean,
What
like,
makes it worse than Penn State or Rutgers?
yeah, that's a great question. It's certainly. I mean, if this is the conversation we're having, it's not a great conversation,
Yeah.
right? I would say Penn State is the worst job because I think Minnesota fans truly care about their basketball program. I don't think that Penn State fans do.
Yeah.
I've seen no evidence of that. Rutgers is a great conversation for what we're talking about because forever, and I've been doing this for a long time, everyone has always said, "Oh, Rutgers is like this sleeping giant." Right? It's the State University of New Jersey. There's so many great players in New Jersey. Just get two or three good players every year out of New Jersey in the tri-state area, and it's a
That's what I
big
say
market.
about Minnesota.
Okay, and you know what? I say the same thing I'm saying about Minnesota, Tony. If Rutgers is such a great job, how come no one has ever won there? And by the way, their facility is outdated, but it's kind of cool. The rack, when it
Yeah.
gets rocking. But it's
Yeah.
like it's. I actually don't know the answer to this question because it should be, but there's obviously reasons. Nobody has ever won at Rutgers ever. So what makes it such a good job? So I would say Penn State is the worst. I would say Minnesota's the second worst. I'm looking at this. We have all these new teams in there,
The
and then
West Coast teams are better, probably.
maybe I'd probably say Nebraska. See, Nebraska, they also care. Those fans turn out like crazy at the
Yep.
lake. It's a brand new arena, so I might say Nebraska is a little bit better. Now, again, these are outdated measures, right? If
Yep.
to answer this question, I'd say give me everybody's NIL budget and let's just rank them. But the interesting school here, by the way, is Northwestern, right? Northwestern, their record overall historically is worse than anybody's. Like they had never been in the NCAA tournament. I think 2016, if I'm not mistaken, is when Chris Collins took them.
Yep.
So they've been there now 3 times. In all the years he's been there, he almost lost his job. But look how long he's been there. He lasted a lot longer than Ben Johnson. They have high aspirations. I think they also have reasonable expectations. They do have money there because they got wealthy alums. It's a prestigious academic school. So Minnesota, you might have a little bit more of a chance to win than at Northwestern. But if you're a head coach, you probably like Northwestern as a better job than Minnesota because folks there are a little bit more realistic about what can a head coach really do.
Yeah, I guess wrapping up that conversation, I totally agree with you. I think now, in terms of a good job, a lot of things go into alumni base,
Right.
boosters, all that money. And
Yes.
Northwestern has a lot of that. And I think in the
Yes.
modern college athletics, they're going to do pretty well. But then I do push back that it just takes one for Minnesota, one big booster to get super excited. And then they're not like Houston, but like they could have a quick turnaround like that, I think,
That's
because it
the
just
good
takes a little
news.
bit of money.
In the portal, if if
Yeah.
if somebody if somebody cut Niko a check for $8 million, he'd have a top tier Big Ten team
Yeah.
next year because he'd go in the portal and he'd buy a great roster and he's a really good coach. I
All
don't
right.
think he has 8 million.
Last
Can you,
question then
can
for
you
you. You
cut
said
checks? Are you cutting checks? What are you doing? I know
I no, I'm not cutting
you ever
checks.
have
I,
that
I
comment.
wish I had that kind of money. It
Okay.
would go into the program, but
All right.
um. So you said that you've known Niko Medved for a little bit. I guess for Gophers fans that might not know him, I guess how do you think he's going to do at Minnesota? And I guess what kind of person do you think he is?
Just a man of a great character. He's a guy that, in the unlikely event that a child with my DNA would ever have the ability to play college basketball, he's the kind of person I want them to play for. He's just down to earth, super smart. He's a family guy. He gets it. And he's a really good coach, man. You look at what he did with his team this year. I mean, I thought they were dead in the water early in the season, and they got really good. And he had those players, Isaiah Stevens, before him, David Roddy. These are guys who could have transferred out. Now, again, the whole NIL thing didn't really explode. Maybe an Isaiah Stevens could have taken advantage of that, but give him credit. Nick Clifford went in the draft, came back. He could have gone in the portal and tried to get more money, wanted to play for Niko. So that's a really good sign. I think whatever players Niko will get at Minnesota, he will get the most out of them. I feel very confident in saying that. I am more pessimistic on his ability to field a competitive enough roster that will put him in position. But if anybody can do it, and again, new coach coming in, money folks might get excited, give him some more resources, and let him coach him up. I could see very well him taking this thing to a level that, to be candid, Ben Johnson would not have been able to.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Again, Seth, I really appreciate you doing this. Where can people, I guess, read your stuff on Hoops HQ, and how can they follow you?
Yeah, just go to hoopshq.com, and it is a paywall site. So if you want to read, you got to put up a couple of shekels. Hopefully you'd find it worthwhile. But, I'm on Twitter, Seth Davis Hoops, and I do weddings and bar mitzvahs and all that stuff. So I'm not hard to find. You found me, and I'm glad you did.
All right. Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Good luck to you, Tony.